Diabetes Connections is brought to you by OneDrop, created for people with diabetes by people who have diabetes, and by Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Simms.
Welcome to a bonus episode of Diabetes Connections. We're going to talk about why we love the insulin pumps we use, or really you use. I asked listeners to give me short reviews of the systems they love, and I cannot thank you enough for sending these in. This is sort of a companion piece to our last episode. We went through in detail best practices of choosing a pump, right? Not which pump, but that was really more about process. You really cannot make a bad or a wrong choice here. This episode really bears that out and might be a disappointment to some of you, I'm sorry to say, but spoiler alert here, every pump has big fans. I asked in our Diabetes Connections Facebook group, who loves their systems? What do you love about it? Then I had one adult with type 1 and one parent of a child with type 1 to chime in on each pump system. So these are pump systems that are available in the United States. There are only 3 pump companies right now, Medtronic, Tandem, and Insulin, making pumps that are available in the United States. I decided no DIY for this because people who use DIY systems generally know enough and educate themselves enough about their options, and their options are different, right? So these are the commercially available pump systems, and they're actually, for all of them, the very latest, which I didn't expect and didn't ask for, but it turns out everybody who chimed in is using the up-to-the-minute latest system as we are recording here in the middle of July of 2020. If it sounds like these folks are reading, they probably are. These aren't actors, as they say. They're real people. And they weren't actually interviews. I just asked them to send me the audio. I gave them a little bit of a prompt and then said, just send me some short stuff. Some people are a little shorter. Some people are a little longer. But I think you're going to get the idea pretty quickly. Let's start with Medtronic. And both of these folks are using the 670G system.
Hello, I'm Shelby from Elizabeth City, North Carolina. My daughter Caroline was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes on Thanksgiving Day 2017, and she's now 10 and a half years old and thriving with the Medtronic 670G insulin pump. We got this pump shortly after her diagnosis in January 2018. I love the auto mode feature that adjusts the basal rates either up or down based on how her blood glucose is trending. The pump is waterproof, which is great since we do a lot of swimming in the summer. And if we're going to have extra activity, we can tell the pump to set a temp target, which helps keep her from going low. The CGMS, the continuous glucose monitor that works with the pump, does not have a share or follow feature at this time. But we've found a do-it-yourself workaround called Night Scout, which in my opinion is superior to the typical share follow function on other CGMS systems. I'm definitely excited about the new upgrades that Medtronic is coming out with. But for right now, we're very happy with the overall control that she has with her blood glucose, with very little need for micromanaging on my part or her part. So that is my thought on the 670G.
Hi, I'm Phyllis. I'm from the greater Boston area in Massachusetts. I've been living with diabetes for over 40 years and have been using the Medtronic MiniMed 670G system for about 3.5 years. Originally, I really was interested in the 670G because of auto mode, although to be honest, I wasn't sure that the system could do better than I could with managing my diabetes, but I was pleasantly surprised. One of the areas that I was really looking forward to with some help is around exercise, and the system's built-in temp target of 150 really took the guesswork out of my workouts. So now 3.5 years later, my time in range is generally about 85% with minimal effort. When I put a little bit more time and pay attention to what I'm doing and eating, that easily bumps up to 90%. And that equals an average A1C of about 6.2, 6.3 for the last 3.5 years. I feel better about everything. I physically feel better and really excited about this system.
Next up is Tandem. And both of these listeners, just like with Medtronic, are using the latest model. They're using t:slim X2 with Control IQ.
Hi, this is Chris from San Diego, California. I've had type 1 for almost 23 years and have used a pump for 5 of those years. I use a Tandem t:slim X2 with Control IQ. I started with the original t:slim, upgraded to the X2 when it was released, and have been through 3 major pump software updates in that time. The thing I like most about the pump is Control IQ, which is Tandem's advanced hybrid closed-loop software. I was initially drawn to the t:slim by the touchscreen user interface and the rechargeable battery. The only thing I'd improve is the cartridge fill process, which is a little complicated but gets easier with practice.
Hi, I'm Beth and I live near Denver, Colorado. Our 6-year-old has had type 1 diabetes for 3.5 years. She started on an insulin pump 6 weeks after diagnosis and has been on a Tandem t:slim for approximately a year. She's been on Tandem t:slim with Control IQ for 7 months. We love that it communicates with her Dexcom CGM and gives her more or less insulin as needed. The exercise mode is great for bike riding and swim practice, and the touch screen is simple enough for her to operate herself. She loves that her blood sugar and trend arrows are visible directly on the pump. With Control IQ, my husband and I have had the most uninterrupted sleep since before our daughter's diagnosis. We couldn't be happier for this technology. This pump is the best choice for our family.
And finally, the people who are using the Omnipod Dash system.
Hi, my name is Nanette, and I live in the Atlanta area. My son was diagnosed with type 1 2 years ago yesterday, and we have been on a pump since October of last year. We started on Omnipod. The biggest reason he chose Omnipod was because he did not want a tail, as he said, or tubing. So we went with the tubeless pump. We love that it's waterproof. We love that he can shower in it. We love that we can dose smaller amounts than you can with pens because he tends to need smaller amounts than half units. We love just everything about it, to be really honest. Our only major complaint is that it tends to come off on pull days, and we've tried lots of different options for keeping it stuck, and so far we haven't found something that works. But other than that, we're super happy with our Omnipod Dash system. Thanks.
Hi, this is Sandra, and I live in Tacoma, Washington. I was diagnosed with type 1 in 2006 when I was 57 years old. I did MDI for a year, got the Dexcom in 2007, and still struggled with random overnight lows. In 2008, I started using the Insulin Omnipod. I chose tubeless as I had struggled with sleep since menopause. Being able to have a very low basal rate overnight has helped me so much with my nighttime lows. Dialing in basal rates has made managing my T1 much simpler. I love being able to do water sports and not worry about being unplugged from basal insulin. I'm looking forward to the Omnipod 5, which will create a closed loop with my Dexcom 6. I'm hoping the FDA approval for the Omnipod 5 and Tide Pool loop comes soon.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Simms.
Thank you so much for sending those in. Isn't it interesting that it's pretty easy to find people who love whatever system that they're using? I didn't have to hunt high and low. I put an ask in the Facebook group and found a whole bunch of people. In fact, I had to cut off the comments. We had so many people who wanted to say how much they love the system that they use. Of course, there are personal factors and preferences that come into play. So just like we said in the previous episode, you got to see these systems. You got to hold them in your hand. And I do think you need to know also as you listen, and you may have assumed this, but just in case, all 6 of those folks are using a system, not just a pump. So they're using a continuous glucose monitor. In the case of Tandem's t:slim, they are using the Dexcom. Same thing with Insulin's Omnipod. They're using the Dexcom. With the Medtronic 670G, they are using the Guardian Sensor 3, which is a Medtronic sensor. It's actually the only one with the same company. The other 2 are separate companies with working agreements. You can use an insulin pump without a CGM. We did it for almost 7 years, between the ages of 2 and 9. My son Benny did not use a continuous glucose monitor, but he did get an insulin pump 6 months in. So at 2.5, he just used a pump, and certainly you can use it that way as well. We now use, as you likely know if you listen, we use the Tandem system. We have the X2 with the Control IQ software. We've had that since January. Benny wears a Dexcom CGM, and we love it. I think it's a fabulous system. there are aspects about it that he really enjoys and prefers that, friends of his don't feel the same way about. I'll lay it out here. I've said it before. What he likes about the T-Slim is that he doesn't have to have an external controller. There's no PDM for it as there is with the Omnipod. He likes that it's flatter on the body, and he absolutely loves the Control IQ software, which has not only lowered his A1C significantly, it's done it with less work from him and less nagging from me. Although he still argues that I nag him too much. I mean, come on, man. But he's 15. I guess that's his job. I will say, though, in all fairness, and knowing what I know about the diabetes community and the technology that's out there, a lot of people feel very differently, right? There are a lot of people who prefer the flexibility of sticking an Omnipod anywhere they want on their body. They don't care about schlepping a PDM, right? They like that it's waterproof. They like that they can remote bolus their kid. That's a big deal. We talked about that last week. And for Medtronic people, there's a lot of people who like that it's all in one. They like that they don't have to go to different companies, and they like that their doctor may be more familiar with it. Is there a downside to every system? Sure, I went through a couple of pros and cons there, but it does come down to personal preference. I am going to link up a lot more information about these systems and what's coming, unless something really bonkers happens and, the delays from COVID or something really goes wrong. They are all on track to be controlled by phone. If not by the middle of next year, then in the next couple of years. And once that happens and you get true remote bolusing for all of these systems, then it's really going to be personal preference. I mean, once that happens, it's going to be absolutely amazing. But you cannot buy today on promises of tomorrow. You know that. It is, of course, worth noting that podcast listeners are more educated and have more money than the population overall, not just in diabetes, not just for this show. That's really just podcasting. So it's not really a big surprise to me that we easily found 6 people using the latest and greatest. Of course, there is so much to talk about in the diabetes community when it comes to access and affordability and insurance and affording the insulin that needs to go into these pumps. So I don't gloss over that. We've talked about that many, many times before, and we'll continue to do so. But this particular episode, I hope, is helpful in seeing what people think about the technology that is out there right now. There really is no one answer. I'm going to tell you one quick story before I let you go here. And I'm sorry, I apologize in advance to all of my rep friends. The reps for all of these companies are just like everybody else. There's wonderful ones, and there's people in it for the money. And you have to be careful about claims. And I'm not singling anybody out. I'm not singling any company out. This happens here, there, and everywhere. But I was at a conference years ago, and I went over to one of the booths just to check out and see. I go to all the booths, see what's going on. And the rep for this pump company said to me, if you switch to our pump, I guarantee your son's A1C will come down 0.5 point. And I was floored. I asked him about that, and he gave me some cockamamie answer. If I tell you more about it, you'll know the pump company, so I don't want to go into it. But I mean, it was really a stretch. But if I had been a newer diagnosed family, I think I would have been very much influenced by that. I asked him if he had any literature and studies to back up his claims, and he did not. But he said he would email me something. I gave him all of my information. Of course, I never heard from him again. The idea that switching technology can lower your A1C by a certain point, and that's why you should switch, that's a tough one. I just said that Control IQ dropped my son's A1C significantly, right? But you know what? It's the whole story of him. It's not just that pump system. If we were new to pumping, if we didn't have the settings right, if he didn't know how to, do certain things, if he was going through a phase or something where he didn't want to do anything, if he wasn't having success with the CGM, if he was getting a rash, if it wasn't working well for him, if it was falling off, if the pump wasn't comfortable, if it wasn't the pump he chose and he didn't want to use it, there's a lot of things that can happen there. Pumps are not a panacea. And anybody who tells you that they are, I want to be careful what I say here, but let's just say they may not have your best interest at heart. So my good guy reps, and there are so many of them, and we have one who is amazing and I love and is one of our heroes in the diabetes community. I'm sorry for that, but I think it's really important that people understand. It's just like the endocrinologist who says, I'm only going to learn this system so you can't have a separate pump because I don't want to learn another system. Right? Man, we got to fight for so much in this community. I hope this helped. If you have any more reviews or questions about pumps, jump into Diabetes Connections, the group. We'll have an ongoing discussion there. And I kind of hope this helps you think a little bit more critically when you see these discussions in other Facebook groups. But let me know what you think. And I will link up in this episode a whole bunch of guides from different organizations who've done really good work on comparing the technology that's out there, pro and con. And please go back and listen to the previous episode about how to choose a pump if you haven't already. Thank you, as always, to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. And thank you for listening. I'm Stacey Simms. I'll see you back here next week. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Simms Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.